Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the fourth episode of the Kungpaokenny Podcast. Somehow this is still live and I'm still going. Today I have man, I forgot the word. I have a new guest today. Introducing Neff, or Neff Sensei, at Neff Sensei on Twitter and on every other social media, I assume. On Discord too, who is a caster for a lot of Dota 2 tournaments, has worked with Summit before, BTS, if you guys know who that is. Neff, go ahead and introduce yourself. What do you got to say?
Hello, everybody. I'm Neff. I've been playing Dota since Dota 1 was awful at the game, don't get me wrong. Got into Dota 2. My life's gone downhill ever since. I guess that's a decent way of introducing myself. If you play Dota, if you work in Dota, your life is suffering.
Yes, it pretty much is. I don't know, man. I actually want to get into that with you later, like the future of Dota 2 scene. Anyway, so you are a caster. Not the biggest caster, but a person who's done their fair share of work, is in the middle of the grind, right, of casting, which I feel like we don't see enough of. And I want to put a highlight on that because we get all of the views on like the top people who get invited to every tournament, but there's a bunch of casters that are working the grind every day, and you yourself included. So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm curious as to who you see at the top level, because I know it's an interview for me, but I want to hear what the general community
has think to is the top level. Okay. I mean, I would say Gods is still pretty consistent up there. LD doesn't cast anymore. Capitalist for sure. I would say Kyle. Cinderin, I still enjoy Cinderin's casting. OD, obviously. Oh, there's some stuff that I'm missing. Dude, I actually missed Blitz being a caster. Like, I really like Blitz as a caster, and he's like now coach of Team Liquid, but that's who I used to see. But I think that like those are the main top ones that I would see if I'm missing anybody, if I'm not wrong. Like,
it's all about who you consider to be a top caster, not who everybody else does. Those are pretty much like who would I like Zyori. I can include Zyori too. My bad. I'm definitely missing a few names, but yeah. It is what it is. In my opinion, I think OD Pixel is just head and shoulders above everybody else. You named some.
Are we talking about like skill? I'm talking about like perception.
Oh, perception.
If I was talking about like skill, OD is by far like up there, right? I would say like redacted, but I want to keep him redacted, and I don't want to say him. Like, he's the only one like play-by-play wise that would compete with OD at this point, but he's gone from the scene, which I am okay about. But yeah, analytically, I think when it comes to like a mix though, like play-by-play and analyst, like the person is probably Capitalist, right? 6K Dota player, can understand the game at a very good level, but also at the same time provides a really good voice play-by-play wise, can scream, can bring hype to a moment. So I think that Capitalist is like probably the best middle ground. OD is like completely on the play-by-play side. And my favorite analyst, that might be that's I don't know. Can you throw some names at me, analyst wise?
Fogged, Jenkins does a lot right now. Lizard, some of the people that you named are
okay. It's either Fogged or Lizard right now. Lizard's actually, I think Lizard's really underrated. I love Lizard casts. Like, I think Lizard is really good. And I think the fact that like he's like a person who's like bilingual, like Russian English, like on and like I think that's a huge advantage for him.
Russian?
Isn't it Russian? Am I crazy? No?
Bosnian.
Okay. Dude, the Eastern European countries. Like, I'm like, no, I'm trying not to like mess it up, because like the Eastern Europeans like sensitive about that stuff. I don't want to be like, damn, bro. Like, I can't just. It just sounds like I'm generalizing.
You get lost in Lizard's dreamy eyes, I imagine. He is incredibly handsome. Yeah.
Dude, I fell in love with him the moment I saw that clip of him like playing Meepo and something else at the same time, or like playing a harmonica or something. I don't know. The guy's actually really entertaining. Like, I think he's hilarious. Like, I love Lizard. Okay. Anyway, yeah, that's who I find most entertaining at the top level. And if I broke it down, that would probably be like the way it is.
I like a lot of those answers. I know this is a podcast. I'm more so used to the informing kind of way
man, just keep talking, now, man. Whatever you
because
want.
I've gone off and off. But the reason why I really like people like Cap is because they do exactly what you're talking about. You know, he's incredibly consistent. He stays up to date with the game. He grinds out pubs. when NADCL was a thing, he was playing inside the tournament, and he was grinding out with some of my friends' teams as well. I respect the hell out of casters that are able to keep that grind up, and I feel as if there's a little bit of a disconnect when you spend so much time analyzing top-level Dota and you don't go back and play. You miss a lot of things that come out as well. Like, you probably sometimes see the Battle Fury Ursa. It was running pubs all the time, and a couple of casters were like, whoa, what's this? This is out of nowhere. And they got kind of mocked by PPD on Twitter and whatnot. I don't know if you saw that.
We're on the double ring of regen vibe right now today.
Yeah.
The envy double ring of regen. That's been there for a while, man. It's been there for a while. Like, I kind of ran it early in the beginning, then stopped believing in it, then like am now back on it.
Yeah, and then it just goes like the straight blade mail, and then it comes out of nowhere, and I'm watching a cast, and I haven't played a game in weeks, and I go, whoa, what is this? And then I feel like the idiot, so it's difficult.
Hard to get you in a game, man. We ask you to get on all the time. It's so hard to get you in a game.
I try when I can, you know, between this and working a job in real life,
for sure.
My time is very limited.
Actually, let me get into that, because I think that, like, is something that I really want to highlight. Bro, you work your ass off. Your schedule is insane. Can we like go through, okay, just even before this, like we were discussing like when we would slot in this podcast. Tell me what you were telling me, like what your schedule was going to be like yesterday.
Well, it's not that insane. Sometimes I do like the double 8-hour shift. I do my work and then I do a casting. But yesterday I had Perfect World. That finished at I think about 7 a.m. I slept for a little while. I do this. I do the Aegis League Sunday show because I'm standing in for somebody. They had lost somebody partway through the season, so I offered to give them a hand. And then after that, I have to go to work.
How long do you work?
It takes me about an hour to get there, 8.5 hours after you include the lunch break. So that's about 11 hours in total, probably.
So 11 hours of work, and then...
No, it's 8.5 hours of work, but I'm talking about getting there and back as well. I'm talking about actual hours I have to commit to Dota stuff. It takes about 11 out of my day.
I mean, dude, you get barely any free time in a day. Like in the 24-hour cycle, which most people are sleeping 8 hours for, you barely get time.
I slept about 4 hours.
And I feel like this is the reality for a lot of low to mid-level casters anywhere, on any place in the planet, right? Like in any esport, actually. I feel like this is the trend. Like you're doing it part-time.
It's interesting that you brought that one up. You have to have a lot of love for what you're doing. And any of the casters that you talk to, especially the top level ones, they started doing what they're doing for free. You have to keep that in mind. They either did it while they were working a job, they did it while they were in school. Slacks, you know, he actually is a nurse, believe it or not. You wouldn't realize that because the guy has horrible hygiene. I'm not sure how he's still alive.
I've heard those Moonduck stories, man. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I got a couple others, but I don't want Slacks to send a hit team out to me,
fair.
you know?
That's fair.
He's got, the Arkosh Gaming hit team.
What is Arkosh Gaming, by the way? I've heard that name flow around. Like, I don't actually know what that is.
It's a lot like Cyberpunk 2077, where you hear a lot about it. There's a lot of hype, but I'm not sure it actually exists. We'll see.
It's like the Bigfoot of esports.
Yeah. We don't know if it's really there.
Yeah. We just hear a lot about it. Anyway. But I think as you were saying, this is like what most people usually get through. And if you, and I think this is esports in general, because I think the one thing that, like, I'm not saying that I'm any expert on esports, but I feel like over the past like few years, or in 2 years maybe, I've been like putting a lot of side time, like my side free time I've put into esports. And just like the one thing that I've learned is just, this thing is not stable, man. Like you have to luck out, and a lot of it is just like, oh, I do this because I love it, and like there's a reason that keeps me going other than money, because nobody does this for money. I think that's the first thing that I would say. Okay, I see your face. Continue.
Some people are able to do this for money. Dota, of course, it is incredibly top heavy. Anyone is going to be able to tell you that. You were talking to me about this before we even started. We had a quick conversation. If you're at the very top level in Dota, or if you're a caster, you get paid a lot of money, as you should. TI is, what is the price pool this year for TI? It's above $40 million.
We are at above 40 million.
Yeah. And of course, Valve spends a lot of that compendium money on setting up the venue, on paying out broadcasters, a bunch of other things
flying
like
people
that.
Out, logistics, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, exactly. I think they hired an entire law firm for TI8 to do all the players' visas for them.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I think that's what you would need with that amount of money, right? Like,
yeah, it couldn't have come cheap. Couldn't get Bulldog in though.
Not cheap at all. I think, like, you know, that's the one thing that, like, as a side note, as a bit of a tangent, I like kind of hosted events for the first time from like my brain conception, right? Like thinking about events and hosting them and organizing them on some level, right? Taking a lead on them. Man, events are stupid hard, man. There's so much you have to do. There's so much you have to consider. So like when I look at like Valve, I kind of like or like I have a lot more respect for a lot of these like large companies now when they host these large events, because I feel like it's really difficult. Anyway, so as we were talking about, like it's very top heavy. There's a lot of differences in terms of like very popular casters and what they get and how they're able to survive, and lower level casters. Do you think there's like anything, is this like a systemic problem? Like we don't have enough of a structure to deal with it? Or is it just the way it's going to be in any sport? Like, do you think there's a solution to this? Do you think there's a way to make it more even?
There are ways to make it more even. A lot of that does come down to the various laws and whatnot that exist. Valve, they play pretty hands-off, so they let the community do what they want. I think Dota TV is such an amazing tool that they've given us to be able to broadcast games, to interact with the community. A lot of the time, I think we take that for granted. If you try to compare Dota TV to things that exist inside any other esport, they will be blown away. And we have had that for, 10 years now?
Yeah.
Like, you come from a bunch of different esports, right? League of Legends, you've seen some stuff in Pokemon. You could probably name a couple. Do they come even close to this?
Yeah, after you're done talking.
I'd like to hear a little bit about them in just a moment, but all these tools that were given for broadcasters to be able to go over stuff, they took, like, the amazing engine for a little bit of what we had inside Warcraft 3 for replay viewing, and they made it even better. There's player perspective. There's so much that I'm so grateful for that one.
Mm. So I think that, just to add on to what you were saying, yes, Dota TV is amazing. I think the player perspective thing, I think a lot of the tools that we've gotten, and I think, well, I wouldn't say, like, I think Dota 2 stats are above average, first of all. And I think B, the Dota TV experience is very different than what other esports get. So just like to get into this, because I actually wrote an article about this, which I will plug later on the description of this video. There's been a lot of argument about exclusivity rights, right? As to, like, Dota 2 is a very difficult thing for a lot of large companies and large esports tournament organizers to monetize, because they cannot guarantee these companies exclusive broadcast rights, right? So let's say, as an example, let's take Overwatch, right? So what a controversial deal that Overwatch did a few years ago was that they signed over exclusive broadcasting rights for the Overwatch League to YouTube. So you can only watch these Overwatch League games on YouTube and nothing else. No Twitch, no rebroadcast. No other casters can do that, right? Dota TV is different though. Valve has made this stance very clear that they're not going to give exclusive broadcasting rights to anybody. They hold Dota TV as a anyone can cast from Dota TV. What was the sponsorship? Do you know, like, the sponsorship thing? Like how they're supposed to do sponsors? Or do you not know? Like with Dota TV, like, you're supposed to have, like, I think
community streamers is what you mean?
Yeah, like if a streamer wanted to watch like ESL1 Birmingham or something, like, they have to do something, right? They have to put the sponsors up, or they have to do like a large delay, something like that.
They have to put the sponsors up. They have to put the delay up to 15 minutes that is requested by the tournament organizer. They set individual rules for each one. Basically, how it works out now is whenever you decide to rebroadcast a tournament that already has a main language, or even if it doesn't have a language, if you don't have permission from that broadcaster, overlays, usually links to the main channel, depending. That's what ESL did with... what was that one before ESL Germany? No, it was ESL Germany.
It was ESL Germany, yeah.
Yeah, 15-minute delay on top of the Dota TV delay, yes. Links to the actual ESL broadcast, and overlays in using some of their advertisements as well. Yep. They were very heavy-handed on that one by ESL, which is a little bit overboard, and at first there was a couple bugs with the system, because when you set that kind of delay, or you had the 15-minute delay inside the lobby, the Dota TV would disconnect you before the end of the game. So they did introduce an update fixing that one a little bit, but I think that we still need to find a little bit of a middle ground.
For sure. And I think that, like, this is like, and I'm not saying that like I have all the answers to this. The one thing that I learned about writing, like about this topic when writing the article, is that it's actually a very nuanced topic, right? There's like arguments for both and against. Like when it comes to, like, we've seen other companies do very well with exclusive streaming rights, right? Like that happens with most of any sport nowadays. All have exclusive broadcasting rights. League of Legends exclusive broadcasting rights. Overwatch, as I said before, has exclusive broadcasting rights, but it's not like that's always the correct answer. It might be the way to the most money, but as an example, in Dota 2, a few years ago, I don't actually remember what, it was another ESL event. I think it was London or not. No, it was in New York. I watched New York on Twitch. Anyway, I don't really remember which one it was, but they tried to do exclusive streaming rights, and they sold exclusive streaming rights to Facebook.
ESL Birmingham 2017, 2018?
Yeah, around that time. Yes, I think it was ESL Birmingham 2017. Nobody watched that. Nobody watched that shit because it was on Facebook. Nobody cares, right?
I went to that event, and I can tell you, I heard some of the staff talking there, the ESL staff, and they said, oh yeah, sales for some of our merch isn't doing very well. And the other guy said, are you surprised? Look what we did. Overheard the conversation between the two of them.
My God. I mean, yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, exclusive streaming rights are not always like a go-to to make, like, it's probably the pathway to make the most money, but it's not necessarily the best business decision depending on the product that you're selling anyway, right? Like, I feel like League does it because they've always done it a certain way and it just works for them. But I think Dota has always been used to the fact that you can just stream these games. And I think a lot of people made a very large deal about this, that you can't, like, this freedom that anybody can go up and do Dota TV and you know, try themselves to make content out of it or make a name out of it has been like a big deal for Valve, right? To put this down.
Now, you're now bringing up some topics that I've got some very hot opinion on and I'm very passionate about. I think Dota 2 is incredibly unique in that way. It is such a community-pushed game. Dota, people did it unpaid for years. They played just because they wanted to. We had, it was one of the more popular games at LAN cafes. It existed as a custom map in Warcraft 3 for ages before, you know, Blizzard, I think that they ended up turning it down when they came forward and said, hey, can we do something exclusive with this with you guys? I'm pretty sure they said no, but Valve.
And then they went to make HOTS.
Yeah, they went to. And look how that ended up turning out. Beautiful game. Competitive scene now dead. Awesome stuff there.
Dude, no. As of last year, okay, me and Peter talked about this.
Okay.
As of last year, we were like, guys, let's gather like 5 people. Let's make a competitive HOTS team, because CSL had like a prize pool for HOTS that was like 20K or something. We're like, free money, dude. Who the fuck plays this game anymore? We just get really good at HOTS for one season. We all get 5 people. We just play. We play CSL and try to make the most money out of it.
Did it work?
No, I mean, we can't commit to anything because we're bad.
Lazy is the better word.
Peter's actually convinced that there's some depth to HOTS, which I'm not gonna completely throw away because he made a decent argument for it. I can't remember because I don't know any details about HOTS because I don't like that game. But yeah, he was convinced that HOTS was a decent game. Anyway, continue with your point.
Dota, just such a grassroots game. It's a labor of love. That's why they were able to host the International. Because of that, Valve set the standard for everybody else as well in esports. There was no kind of prize pools anywhere close to, was it $1 million for the
$1 million?
Place?
Yeah, I think the True Side documentary went into that really well. And I think if this is a bit of a plug, but if anybody who is listening to the podcast like doesn't really understand anything about Dota 2 competitive scene, the True Side documentaries are probably some of the best produced like bridges between like a normal viewer of esports or like a person who's never watched Dota at all to like somewhat understanding what our scene represents and how these games feel and how cool they can look and what goes behind, like the storylines behind those games. I think just a bit of a tangent. I think True Sight is like one of the most unique things that that Valve does that nobody else does, and produces it in an amazing way to really capture a lot of audiences when it comes to competitive Dota 2.
Even if they Photoshop out the beer can that Fear is holding and replace it with a water bottle. I gotta criticize them when I can.
That's fair.
I don't like censorship.
Valve deserves to be criticized about a lot of things. I think we can get into that later. Like I can go off on like how they've lost, like the handling of Dota 2 in this pandemic has been an issue, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, the lack of communication and whatnot. But as much as I was praising them for Dota TV earlier and how they handle their broadcasting and whatnot, I don't like certain parts about them. Anyways, continuing on with my point that I keep wanting to go off about is it being such a labor of love and such a grassroots community. People, I went to Europe and whatnot. People, they actually just host like LANs where you bring your own computer, you buy your way in, you play those. It is amazing. And when you try to rip the game away from the community and say, hey, you need to go onto Facebook, and we're going to come up with such a cold and corporate response to anyone who tries to stream this onto Twitch to their viewers. Everyone hated that. They just sent out DMCAs right away. That was the opposite of what the game is all about. And so, yes, everybody hated them. Yes, the Facebook deal with them ended up completely backfiring. And they didn't end up getting a deal like that again. And I think Dota was one of the worst games you could have possibly brought to the Facebook platform. Like, you're not going to get any new viewers of a game as complicated as Dota off the general Facebook user base. No. Give them Rocket League. It's a bunch of cars shooting soccer balls into a net. That's pretty easy to follow.
Yeah, it is. Rocket League's probably one of the simplest esports to look up.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's not easy gameplay, but no. It's a car throwing a soccer ball around. That's cool as hell.
I mean, it's like stuff. Again, it's like ease of spectating, right? Like fighting games and Rocket League probably like at the top of that, like easiest for you to jump in and just understand. But something I wanted to go off of that you said, Dota 2 has been very grassroots. I think me personally, some part of how I view esports is that like I've been watching esports and Dota since I was like 11, man. I played Dota 1 when it first came. Like my first patch was 6.54, I think 6.54, 6.59. So pretty long time ago. And I used to watch like old Dota 1 Chinese replays because I was a weird kid that would watch that for fun for some reason.
Oh, awful game before 6.60.
Yeah, so bad. Anyway, so like what I'm saying is that like esports has always held this thing where it's very grassroots, and it came up from communities that were like very small, very niche, right? And now we're moving on to a world where we have big money investments into esports. Like people with money and resources are looking at this and like, oh, look at this cash grab, we can do this, right? And we can just throw money at it and it'll work. And I think Overwatch League is one of the best examples of this, right? You can't just throw money at esports and hope that it works. It's a very complicated organism that's been there for so long. They try to do it like
sports.
And turn it into sports, right? So that's what I was trying to get into. Like, where do you see this direction going? Because I think that like when we look at League right now as an example, right? League is really turning into the NBA at this point. We have franchise people. We have developmental leagues. League of Legends free agency is a whole thing on its own, and it's like taking a life of its own, just like the NBA free agency. I like the reason like this week I was supposed to do the League of Legends like free agency podcast with a bunch of people, but then things happened, they couldn't do it. And
typical League people like continue.
But yeah, the way I talk about League and the way that I talk about Dota are like very different. I talk about League as like a a traditional sport, but Dota I've never been able to talk about it like that. I've never when as a really funny thing is that like I write for Track Dota and a bunch of Dota Buff and stuff like that, and when I bring up the idea of hey, we could do some like off-season stuff, right? And everybody in the writers meeting just laughs because they're like, when's the off-season for Dota, man? When's this like schedule that's fixed that players get like some break? And I'm like, yeah, you're right, there's no schedule, there's no it's you have points, right? But like, okay, do you think it's sustainable? Like let's say we go back to like League. The thing is, like League, everybody plays at the same stadium every week. They have a set schedule. They have set rules every week, right? But Dota 2 teams, they're flying different countries every other month, right? Boot camping in different places every other month. Like, do you think that's sustainable? Like, do you think the growth of Dota will continue like that? Or do you think we'll move on to a League version?
I think we're more so going to a League version. Dota wants to do something unique, and we started to see the solution of that with the DPC that was going to come in 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
Completely bodied by COVID, but they were already trying to go back in the direction of online leagues. They were trying to have everybody in their own country/region. The top teams ends up getting flown out to a LAN that's going to happen every so often. Everyone is still welcome to do their tournaments, and a small break in between. I mean, as you said, there's no off-season. These teams were just getting absolutely exhausted, and that's why at the start of the year, EG, OG, Secret, PSG, LGD, every top team, they took some time after TI off, and it hurt them. They were out of practice. PSG, LGD, for example, they tried to come back into the second major. They ended up getting blown out in the open qualifiers because they didn't qualify for the closed anymore because they chose not to come. They lost like was it a best of 1 or a best of 3? Something insane like that.
Like you just get you lose one match and it's like kind of over. Like open qualifiers, anything can happen, right? That's why they're so scary.
And that was just after they introduced neutral items.
Oh God!
Completely different game. Yeah, and so third place TI winners, they end up just getting knocked out in the best of 1, and then they're just out until the next a part of the circuit comes, the next major minor circuit. Like bye, no minor for them either, because it was based on the same set of qualifiers, both the majors and the minors.
Yeah,
I love quoting that example for a couple of things, and at the same time, I love it. You know, if you're going to take that time off, you should be punished. You shouldn't say, "Hey, I'm going to take a break and just invite me to the next qualifiers or just invite me to the next tournament." That's not fair to some of these other teams that have been working their asses off since the very start of the year.
I agree, but don't you think it's just like not sustainable though? Like we can't keep doing this. Like it's just not possible for people to be flying different parts of the world. You're like, dude, because I think when people think like, let's break down what a team probably goes through when they finish their tournament, right? Like, let's say you finish, I don't know, ESL 1 Germany, let's say that happened in a LAN, right? You're in Germany, you finish that, right? And I presume that during the moment you finish that tournament, you know next month there's some tournament in NA, right? So the players basically don't get any time off. They're not going home to their families. They're going home to the practice facility, wherever they get to practice. For 2 weeks maybe, right? They play their games, they practice a bit. You have to go through visa stuff for the US, which is a pain, right? You have to fill in all this visa stuff, probably go to a consulate, probably do an interview. And this happens every tournament, right? Because you have to apply for visas for different parts of the world every single time.
You need to start applying for your visa in some of these countries before you even qualify.
Exactly. Right? Which is crazy, which makes no sense. Right? Which is and you know, this has a lot to do with whether or not esports players are athletes, blah, blah, blah. That can be a whole other conversation on its own. But like the schedule itself is just it just seems impossible, right? You might get visas you might have paid that small amount of money, that like $100, $200, maybe like $1,000 for the entire team combined, and not even get into the tournament in the first place, right? Then you have to settle, living spaces, how they're gonna get food, like, because some tournaments give you this stuff, other tournaments don't. There's some basic guidelines, but they don't fulfill basic guidelines for food, water. A lot of these logistics, a lot of stuff is still missing from the Dota 2 infrastructure. That's like an issue, right?
Yeah, and Valve will assist some of these companies, but it's also not on them. And these third-party tournaments end up being huge as well. ESL throughout, was it 2018? I think after they did the whole Facebook fiasco and threw DMCAs at people, Valve hit them with the "no, don't do that" stick, rolled up a piece of paper and go, "ESL bad, give them a whack. You're not hosting any DPC tournaments this year." They put on a great show, but they weren't sanctioned by Valve there. They had absolutely nothing to do with Valve. And because of that, they can do basically whatever they want, despite being major tournaments, which is a big issue in and of itself. But if Valve does start getting involved, then you need to start getting to some of these broadcasting rights. If they're a little bit closer to the community, the community is going to, or these tournament organizers are going to say, "Hey, we want exclusivity on this, this, and this if we're working this closely with you," which I don't think they want to do either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Neff, in a perfect world, right? Okay, so DPC for this year is already kind of scrapped. It's rough. It's horrible. We've just lost a year to COVID, right? And I think League has just bumped up like crazy this year because they've been able to host a 5,000 person LAN in China for the World Championships. And Dota still hasn't even announced our World Championships, where it's going to be or when it's going to be this. Well, we know where it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to be yet, right? So we're a little behind compared to League. But let's say we reel back from this pandemic. The pandemic is over in 2021, maybe midway through 2021. What do you think, what is like this perfect DPC structure that you would like? Like, what's your perfect world?
I can get it. Nice one. Perfect world right now.
Yeah, I know.
Impressive. My perfect world, I like what they had coming with their 2 tiers in the DPC season. upper and lower bracket. I think it's going to look a little bit different based on what region you're in. I was talking to somebody about this before COVID even came around. I think the European scene is going to look very structured. Everyone, top 16 teams, the 8 in the upper division, 8 in the lower, they're all going to be sponsored by organizations that exist in gaming. In NA, things are going to be a little bit more chaotic. I think South America is probably just going to dominate the scene because the amount of money that you get can pay for the cost of living down there. They can be Dota players full time. In North America, not going to happen. Yeah. And that's why you start to see some of these organizations, they migrate down into SA. They try to do it a couple times, but say Chaos SA and what was the other one? There were 2.
VGJ?
The 2 that tried to go into South America. I don't think there was a VGJ SA team.
I don't remember.
One was definitely Chaos. I forget what the second one was.
That's a really interesting thing, though. I haven't heard of that before today, but that's a really good idea. Like, why wouldn't you relocate to South America, create more opportunity in a third world country anyway for a scene that has been sorely lacking when it comes to representation.
Developing country, it wouldn't really
quote
say
unquote, yeah, quote unquote.
True, but average income, average cost of living. Say you're playing in a North America, South America tournament, $5,000 for first place. You split that between everyone on your team. That's not going to pay for rent for the people in North America, but $600, $700 average income in Peru, you're fine. Just go on to the next tournament.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Actually, I never thought of it like that. That's really smart. You are not paying rent with $1,000 in California. I tell you, that's actually like the most. This is like a bit of a tangent, which we've done a lot of in this podcast, but that's a bit of like a conundrum for me, which is that like, especially in North America, esports is super centered around like 3 cities, which is essentially LA, Texas. Well, not Texas as a state,
Houston?
But like, Houston. Sorry, my bad. Houston, and I mean some parts of Washington. At least Dota, right? Like Dota, they're very centered around these parts, and like at least California and Washington just happen to be very expensive places to live in general for any esports. And I feel like it's just like it just seems very ironic to me that like. It's weird. There's been no expansion, Like I feel like I've heard a lot of people like arguing that Boulder, Colorado might be a really good esports city, stuff like that. I don't know. I think that like an expansion of like different places where esports might be more popular would only do well for the sport. Diversity of places where we could hold things. Anyway.
Well, it's difficult to just like set up, hey, this is going to be the esports capital of Canada. We'll do it in Winnipeg, everybody. I don't know. You can't just decide that. I don't know, middle of nowhere. It's got to be a central location. It's got to have a decent amount of people.
Yeah.
And usually when you have so many people in a place, rent is going to go up. That's just how things are.
Yeah. It's just like California. Dude, even Vancouver rent is just like, oh my God, dude. It hurts me. Well, I'm also just like, I'm paying expensive rent. I don't want to get into it. Anyway.
I have been in the same city as you. Keep that in mind if you don't recall.
Aren't you in New West?
I am. Well, thank you for doxing me on the podcast.
I know I'm doxing you on the podcast. Yeah, they're going to look through New West to look for Nef Sensei, the entirety of New West. But, like, isn't it cheaper there compared to, like, where I live?
A little bit. I'm in a high rise though.
Okay. Yeah, I see your white walls. I see. I don't know. It seems like a nice place that you're living in. Looks decent.
Well,
don't dox yourself, bro.
Yeah,
that's good.
I want to do that one. Get stopped by sometime.
Okay.
When we're not social distancing, I actually got notified during this podcast that my roommate's boss was positive for COVID, so I actually won't be going into work today.
I think you shouldn't. That sounds really rough, man. Don't do that. That's a risk.
So I'll be calling my boss after we're done here. He's not going to be pleased with me, but I'll give him a couple hours notice at the very least.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about how DPC has been affected during this pandemic, right? So just to give a quick rundown to the people who are listening, League of Legends has been able to hold their worlds in this pandemic somehow through some miracles. But Dota 2 has not taken a step forward at all. We haven't had any announcements, haven't had any form of structure from Valve at all. They've been trying to fix it, but as usual, Valve is very slow in implementing anything. And a lot of people have suffered, a lot of Dota players have suffered. A lot of basically in this past few months, there's been just like an exodus of a bunch of teams letting go of their Dota teams because they can't afford to pay them anymore because there's just no structure during this pandemic. It doesn't make any sense, right? Dota 2 is just not a good business proposition in general, much less in a pandemic, right? Are there like any major examples of this that you can give me just to like help
your argument?
Yeah, just to help my argument, because I feel like you would have better examples of this since you're like just in the middle of the scene anyway.
Absolutely. Let me tell you about Wildcard Gaming. I was part of
aren't they like based here? I've like
here
wildcard.gg, is that?
Yeah, that's them.
Okay, yeah.
They're not based out of Vancouver, no.
Okay, maybe I'm crazy then. My bad. Go ahead.
CEO is based out of Texas. Anyways, I was part of Wildcard Gaming for a couple of years. I helped them come up with a number of ideas, but I was their Dota guy, so to speak. Attempted to get into Dota for 2.5 years. I was with the company and just never really an easy point into it. I mean, maybe a couple times they ended up flaking out, either didn't have the money to pay upfront, wanted to talk to sponsors, whatnot, but it's not an easy sell when you go to sponsors. You try and compare yourself to some of these better teams. They go, okay, well, we don't want to put our brand on something. We're not willing to give you this money if you're not getting to these majors with these other teams. So you either have to be EG or you have to be number 2 or number 3. And, number 2 and number 3 were things like Crazy. They were things like VGJ, things like Chaos that existed within North America. But when the pandemic shut everything down, or even a little bit before that, these teams, they either switched up their rosters or they came in and out. Beast Coast, of course, had a North American sponsored team before they picked up the 8th place at TI South American Catburger / Infamous Squad, as it was represented at the time. But these teams are incredibly expensive. That's one of the issues with Dota as well. You want to pick up a Smash player, you have their following, right? Yeah. I don't know exactly how much that costs, but you could pay for their I
think the advantage of Smash, at least, is that like at least Smash players are extremely vocal on Twitter. So there is some social platform where they're constantly interacting in one way or another with their fans. And I just think, like one of the worst things about Dota 2 players is that they have no social media presence whatsoever. And
Exactly, and they don't really want to reveal too much about what they're doing either. So a lot of time they won't stream their games. Their Dota buffs are even listed as private, so people can't follow what they're doing to counter them out.
Yeah.
And another issue is, okay, you pick up a Smash player, say you give them $3,000 a month. You pick up a Dota team, you're giving 5 people $3,000 a month, and then they got their manager, and then they got their coach, and then you have to fly all of them out for events and put them all up in hotels when you got something to do. It just doesn't make any sense to me, unless you got the kind of viewership that Secret does, that Liquid does, and then you're in an okay place. But even EG, they're not playing anything. It's to the players, it's not worth their time to only play in $75,000 tournaments, which is wild. That's a huge amount of money.
No, for them it's like chunk change. It doesn't even matter. Their contract, like I think RTZ would make that amount of money from the last like EG merch drop that he had. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't do anything for them, right? And that's like the thing. The value proposition for Dota is just in a very weird place right now. Like it's super weird. Like, how do you convince people to like invest in a thing that practically isn't even built yet, right? Is basically what's happening. You're halfway through construction. We're either gonna get demolished or we're gonna keep going, and we need to find like better investors. So I have like this thing, right? And I feel like I've talked to you specifically about this, which is that like Riot's approach to how they were okay. So basically at the turn of the 2010s, I think Riot and Valve both realized that they had something on their hands when it comes to esports. They were like, damn, we have something here. We could really build something out of this. And they both built, and Riot took 8 years to just push this into the most competitive, stable scene possible. And I think Valve had an attempt to do that, but they were also like, oh yeah, let's like work on Half-Life Alyx. Let's work on these other Valve games that we're a game development company. We're not an esports company. Let's make that very clear. And I think that that's really hurt us. I think it would have made, like, I think one of the things that I've like advocated for a long time is like, hey man, if you don't like how this is working, why haven't you outsourced it to somebody else? Right? which I feel like might be the end. Like, I don't know why Dota 2 I feel like if Dota 2 esports was maybe outsourced to somebody else, it might have made more sense. I don't know. Opinions, thoughts.
Who do you outsource it to? Who's going to do a better job than you when you set the standard with by hosting the first international, the standard that everybody else has followed? And, you know, a lot of people, they say, okay, well, we're going to go to ESL, which recently had the merger with, what was it, Dream League, DreamHack?
Yeah.
I forget their name exactly. They exist as ESL now. It doesn't matter. Dream ESL. We'll call it that. Anyways, a lot of people, they hire ESL for at least the first couple of years. Rainbow Six, for example, their scene is thriving right now. They're not with ESL anymore, but they had them assist the first couple of years that they were doing things.
Most R6 events were ESL at this point. ESL's like R6 is a great esport. Like
but all that infrastructure was put into place by ESL as it built up.
Yeah.
So ESL, you know, just doing an awesome job. And how do you compare to that when you only have 200 employees and you don't want to really talk with your community?
Yeah. Is the issue, right? We barely get anything from Valve, and it's really frustrating because you have like, and I think, you know, I've heard Slacks and I've heard a bunch of people talk about what Valve is like. And in case people don't know what Valve is like, Valve has this weird thing that they call flat hierarchy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just in this situation kind of is an issue, because what a flat hierarchy means is that like any person who works in Valve is a Valve employee and not a specific developer of a specific game. So if one day a Valve employee wanted to stop working on Dota and wanted to move to Half-Life or something, or wanted to work on like Steam or something, they're free to do so. They can just move away. So there's no set group of people. I'm sure they have some set group of people to work on Dota, but it's not enough to facilitate what they want to facilitate. You know, you can't possibly imagine that a group of like 10, 15 people could possibly understand how to run what is going to be a global esport in different places at different times at all. Like, I just don't think it's feasible, you know? It's just very weird. I don't know how the future is going to go if it keeps going in this direction. I worry.
You already see the punishment for it. There was a number of times where they messed up with their scheduling. They scheduled some events they were doing on top of others. They'd either push things or move them back a week. And when you do that, even, let's say you want to start an event 2-3 days sooner or 2-3 days after, 12 different teams that are going to one of your DPC events, they've already booked their boot camps. Flights are on the way. They're only staying there for certain hours. It costs them tens of thousands of dollars for your little mistakes of trying to change dates around a little bit. And when you only have 200 employees, hell, I imagine Team Liquid's got more employees than Valve does.
They definitely have more Liquid. They 100% have more people than that. It's crazy to me. Like, I just think that like Valve is not an esports company. They're a game development company. It's always going to be like a huge weird thing, you know, like how we handle Dota and whether or not we push forward as an esport. And I think like here's the thing, right? Also, is that I don't know. It just doesn't seem possible for this to keep moving forward. And I don't know. Okay, I'm just kind of lost now. I kind of blanked out when we were talking.
That happens. You pause a Dota game.
You pause something and anyway. To take a bit of a tangent, I want to go back to like casting, because I feel like that was kind of the main thing that I really wanted to talk to you about. But like if a person would want to get into casting, let's say somebody was listening to this podcast and wanted to start casting, give me like a pros and cons list. Like, what do you?
We've been going off for 45 minutes. And we barely even touched on casting.
That's fine, man. I don't like. I'm good with like how
we'll just skip ahead. We'll make a little note on the video. Hey, if you want to actually talk to the caster about casting,
I'm gonna do that. Like, I'm gonna have like I have those like timestamps, and I'm like, you want to listen to casting, it's gonna be here.
Yeah. My advice, I started talking about this at the start of the podcast. You have to have a lot of love for what you're doing. You told to me at the start of this, I want to hear about how you started getting into it, and that came in an interesting way. I played on a Dota team called Riptide Gaming. You wouldn't have ever heard of it. I played in like Division 2 JDL ages and ages ago, and one of my teammates was actually playing JDL and trying to play competitive Dota so he could become a caster. He put the cart before the horse on that one, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. He wanted to build a name for himself by being good enough at the game that he could be a competitive player, and then use that to become a caster. I absolutely hated the guy. I hated having to play on a team with him. I despised his attitude and a lot of what he had to say. And he knows that now. We're very good friends at this point. Yeah. His name was Chicago Ted.
Okay, sure. Was he from Chicago?
He was not. Not even from Chicago.
See, I knew it. When people have like when people say
his
Chicago
name wasn't
Ted,
Ted
I just
either.
had an inclination he was not going to be from Chicago.
Yeah. His name wasn't even Ted. So anyways, Chicago Ted, awesome friend of mine now. I played on a team with him. He convinced me to jump on as an analyst with him once. So I thought, okay, I was one of the people with a little bit better understanding on the team. I came in as a sub for a player who had left. I quickly took over with the drafting and whatnot. The team fell apart not long after that, but we ended up becoming friends. He slowly adopted, okay, maybe I am putting the cart before the horse kind of thing. And I accepted that maybe not all casters were awful at video games. Anyways, he invited me to cast Sivo and whatnot with him. And, you know, sometimes I got nervous. There were tons of people watching. I wasn't sure if I was going to say the right thing. I was actually at my parents' house at the time. My mom and my stepdad, the two of them had a fight in the other room. I actually had to step away and go break that one up in the middle of the broadcast. And afterwards, I'm just like, all right, there's no way I'm ever doing this again. This was awful. It was embarrassing. And several years later, when I come back into Dota, I'm friends with Dragon Drop, who was starting to make a name for himself and doing it for a couple of years so far. I came in as a coach and whatnot. He's like, hey, I need a hand with this. Do you mind jumping on with me? And he said, yeah, sure. And I told him I haven't done this for a while. Training wheels would be nice. And he has me doing a broadcast that has like 7,000 viewers or something like that with Execration out of Southeast Asia just after TI. And I was, shit, so much for the training wheels that you said you were going to give me. I wanted like a 100 viewer thing tops. So,
oh man, for a lot of people in Dota 2, like back then, Southeast Asia was basically the training wheels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but 7,000 viewers out of nowhere, and I was still worried about that Thivo thing that I'd done several years prior. But I got a lot of experience from, you know, working with the team, acting as a coach, telling people what to do, and I just kind of broke things down whenever he wanted things explained to me. I think you need to have certain things to talk about. I think different casters have different things that they're very good at. But for me, I kind of broke down the mentality of the players, what people wanted to do, and how you could beat what somebody was doing, what the other team may have been thinking. Because my way of coaching players at the time was, all right, think about what the enemy team wants to do and counter that out, which ended up turning out decently on the broadcast. I don't think I was very good at public speaking at the time. I still don't consider myself very good, but I managed to find that niche with what I was doing. So I got a little bit of a head start on a lot of other casters. The fact that I could just jump onto that 7,000 viewer thing with Dragon Drop, and that was a connection that I got through managing teams, through coaching and whatnot, which is a little bit unfair, I think. And it goes to show that there's a bit of nepotism there, right? How do you come into Dota and become a caster if you don't have that kind of connection?
I think that this espouses a lot about my philosophy and how I view the world. So this is going to get real philosophical for a moment. But I just think that the world wasn't made fair, man. I don't think that if, like, okay, as an example, if I'm job hunting, right? I think that for most people, what they think is the best way to get a job is to write an application and send it in, or make your resume as good as possible. And I feel like I realized, like, when I was 15 or something early on, and this will, like, I'll get into this as to why, because there's a lot of stuff that I can't really say, but like when I was 15, I kind of realized that the world just really wasn't fair, and I could skirt my way around things, and I could get where I wanted to go by doing things that I just weren't necessarily fair, but would get me where I needed to go. And I think that, like, especially in esports, especially in industries that are young, industries that are not yet established, industries that are new, your paper resume is not going to get you anywhere. And I think that, like, a lot of the time it is about knowing people. And to me, like, and don't get me wrong, like, I consider you a friend, but, like, at the same time, there's, like, some connection between us, right? And we started playing because I knew Panders, and Panders invited you to a Dota party, right? And we started playing Dota.
Panders knows me because of Mr. V, and then you know me because of Panders and whatnot.
And I only know V and Canuck because I just started playing Dota with them, right? And they're like pretty like I got my job at Dota Buff and Track Dota and all these places because I know these people that I just happen to play Dota with, right? It's not because like I sent in a writing sample, don't get me wrong, and I passed their test, but like it's because I got recommended by somebody. And a lot of the times when it comes to esports, you need to get recommended by somebody. You better know the correct people at the correct time. And I just think that's just the way the world works, you know? And it sucks, but I feel like that if you know how to take advantage of that, then it doesn't suck for you.
Yeah, you need to be in the right place in the right time. I absolutely agree with that one.
Yeah.
Just the other day, you know, our Cryptic, he'd been doing CSL and whatnot for years. You might know him.
Dude, I've been so a bit of a sneak peek. There is a planned podcast with Peter, who is the collegiate manager, a person who coached the League of Legends UBC team for a few years, and our Cryptic about collegiate esports. I'm hoping to make a podcast about that in the coming weeks, in the next 2 weeks or something.
All right. Let me tell you, I had no idea who our Cryptic was. Never even heard of him.
Yeah.
And he's been doing this for years and years. And I do my best to watch things like both that happen above me and below me, so to speak. I try to get as much information I can about the scene at large. I like helping out amateur and up-and-coming people, but I'd never heard of this guy. He was to replace B-Cop one of the days where his internet was struggling, because Party Pete didn't have the opportunity. And just because he was available that day and he hopped on, BTS, they hired him to do the Summit 13 online, which is a major deal for a lot of people.
That's huge.
He was so hyped. He got to do most of the group stage with me, which is incredibly awesome. But, you know, he's like pretty good at what he does. He's a decent producer, helps out with a lot with CSL. And it didn't matter how good he was at what he was doing. He just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Well, I mean, I think I'll push back a little bit on that. I think it does matter how good you are at what you're doing. A little bit, yeah. Like, I think that like if you can, like, my belief, and like, don't get me wrong, I'm a stupid 22-year-old, but this is like how I try to get by every day. And like,
you're smarter than me at 22, but go on.
Like, I'm just believing that like some of the work that I do for Dota Buff and like the work that I try to do for this podcast is like A, improving myself, but B, is like trying to put my best out there, right? And I feel like the thing is, like, don't get me wrong, you need right place, right time, but in order to get right place, right time and that luck to come to you, you have to throw your darts out. You have to keep throwing your darts out until eventually you get, like, you know, you hit your bullseye, and all that stuff finally can combine and finally materialize into something that matters to you. Right? Like what our Cryptic was saying, right? Like, he's run CSL for a very long time, and then finally he got like kind of a break, and then was able to implement the knowledge that he learned for so long into what he's doing now, right? So I think that like it's kind of a combination of a lot of things. I just think that like viewing the world in this like very black and white sense, where it's like, oh, resume equals job, or like just going this linear path of trying to get to where you're going, is like not a very not very smart, I guess.
I will say that apparently they found, the reason they contacted him was they found his resume in a stack of casters who applied to Summit ages ago.
Yeah.
So you have to have a little bit of everything. You need to have that resume ready if you got it. I actually went over Peter's resume with him in person when I was about to be doing something that ultimately fell through.
Yeah.
Yeah. I paid him a little bit for his time, but I didn't want to try to push that project unless I felt like it was going to succeed. And after a couple of weeks, I realized it wasn't going to, so I shut it down before making it public.
Okay. Wait, okay, so, and I can cut this out, but is this the Discord server, or?
Discord server? No, this was the NA league that I was going to use due to replace NADCL.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Anyway, I actually wanted to bring up the server. So, you actually give me a quick rundown of what the server is. You have started a Discord server that seems to be, I think, doing good things in our scene. But tell the lovely viewers what you're doing with this Discord.
Okay, it's still in a couple of phases where there's things I need to add, but basically there's several resources that players in Dota have in order to figure out what's going on. You know, there's Liquipedia. There's the Dota client. You can click on the watch tab. You can watch things, filtered by like amateur, professional, etc. Dota Pro Circuit.
It's not been great post-pandemic. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's not been great post-pandemic. A lot of the tournaments on there are actually scam tournaments that have been run and are still listed there under ticket.
Oh god, the
Valve
scam
just doesn't maintain anything. A funny thing about scam tournaments, when they shut them down, they actually just name a bunch of bots after the players and have them play against each other to keep the games running, the stats posted.
Oh, they still put them up?
Yeah, they still put them up. They just keep the tournaments going. Everybody have their names. It's like obviously different friend IDs, but everyone with like the player names, but bots.
Oh, that's crazy.
Anyways, there's that one. There's the Dota 2 Tournaments Discord as well, which is a mostly public server where you can find information about what's going on. But all of these, I realized, were a little bit inactive. I posted in all of them. I tried to figure out exactly what was going on. There were 7-8 tournaments currently happening, and everybody I talked to could only ever name 1 or 2. So there's a huge disconnect between the community and tournament organizers. Like, players wanted to reach out to tournaments, and tournaments wanted players, but they weren't connecting because those connections weren't there, and none of the resources we had either active leadership or people that knew they existed in the first place. So I put together this server called America's Dota 2 to try and inform people of what's going on, what tournaments are happening, and connect people, so to speak. I am working on a bot right now with a developer that's going to follow a lot of things that happen inside Dota TV. If your tournament is ticketed, it'll follow it and post it as it's happening. Unfortunately, the Dota API is a little bit broken, and it doesn't track region data for tickets. I think that broke around when Source 2 happened.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's just been broken since. You can enter a region for your ticket, but the actual data for it does not exist inside the Dota API. We haven't
done tickets in a long time either, Like, we haven't done, we haven't had a ticket system for... Yeah, I think since Source 2 came out, I don't think there's been a tournament that's been like, oh, buy a ticket to watch this.
No, not buy a ticket to watch it, but each tournament has a ticket to it. So say Epic League, right? Yeah. It's listed as a tournament. You need to have it on the ticket for it to be listed as a tournament, and for these sites like Track Dota, Dota Buff to list it that way. Anyways, that one is just completely broken. It doesn't track region data, even though region data exists for teams. So it slowed down the process a little bit with how it's being developed, and we need to pull data from multiple sources. Anyways, this Discord I'm working on, sorted, and just trying to make information as public as possible, because a lot of people follow Valve's lead, and they don't like information being that public. They don't like people talking about their ideas. They're hesitant with what they share with people, which feels super weird to me. And I think it really slows down the growth of the community.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like, the fact that... I think it's crazy to me that that a lot of these people who are playing these tournaments only know about 2 when there's, like, a bunch out there that they don't know about. And I think it's really important. Like, and that's why, like, I respect this a lot, which is that I think all the resources are out there, but there needs to be a facilitation, right? Which, again, Valve does not do, and therefore it comes to the community for us to do and to accomplish. And you are obviously doing this huge part. You're doing this work for the community, and I wanted to put a highlight on it. I think it's really important, and it's respectable, sir, that you are doing this for our community.
I love this game. I want more people to be able to play it. I want it to be easier to play. You shouldn't have to know a guy to get anything done. You shouldn't say, okay, message him and then message him and then message him. Just one player recently reached out to me. He wanted to get his account unbanned. He got a 6-month ban on it. He's had a 5.9K behavior score. He says, hey, do you know who I message? I say, okay, yeah, send an email to Valve. They'll respond to it about 20% of the time. They message him back and they say, okay, hey, I can't help you. And I try to give him a couple other contacts, and it's okay, reach out to Cyborg Matt. Cyborg Matt's DMs aren't open, so you find someone who can message Cyborg Matt on your behalf. Then he messages Valve or something like that. Just to get an account unbanned? That's wild to me. What's with all this middleman shit?
I agree. That's crazy. And the Valve ticket system just only works 1/5 of the time, which is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
It's, again, right? Like, these things can be fulfilled. These things should be fulfilled considering the scale of what we have, right? Which is always very jarring to me. It's like, you have this community, this very feral community, right? And I think the thing with Dota 2 is that, like, Dota 2 doesn't have the largest amount of players, but I think they have the most devoted players. And if I want to operationalize that, I'll operationalize that in terms of the amount of money that we raise every year during TI. You know, I don't pay $150 every year into the stupid digital book for me to get 3 digital skins because I just want this. No, I fucking love this game because, and I play it a lot, and it's worth the investment for me to put that money in. And other people, you think they pay to get like the $1,000 Aegis just so they can get a metal thing on their? No, they care about the game, and they're willing to spend for this game. There are mainland Chinese people with endless pockets to spend money on this game. There is a Saudi prince who has every item. No, this is a real story. He has every Dota item known to man in his inventory. His inventory is 12,000 items large. He has all the Saudi oil money in the world to pour into this game. And we somehow cannot get TI to work. Or we can't get a structure to get into the system, which is ridiculous to me. It's insane to me. It's insanity that there's such a large disconnect with, like, you know, it shouldn't be that hard to put this here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just really frustrating to me that there's like been a lot of this, like there's a lot of money and there's a lot of love in this game, and I'm honestly just very scared that it might die out at some point. And on some level, it's like why I have started diversifying too, man. Like that's why I started watching League of Legends, why I started playing Smash a little bit.
That's why everyone tried to jump ship to Artifact. Is look what happened to that one though. No one actually gave a shit about the game. That is looking at a different game to make money off of.
Oh Jesus.
What
but
a
yeah,
mess that game was.
That's what I mean, right? I don't know. Like the hope is obviously Dota. I think Dota. Here's my argument. I think Dota, and I want you to hear. Like I want your opinion on this prediction. I think Dota will never truly die, but there's a chance that this esport like dies out at some point. You know, we turn into a Brood War, or we turn into a Melee or something, like a Super Smash Bros. Melee, which I would say is not the best comparison because it's actually growing right now, but. Like I'm just scared.
How funny is that? That is Smash Bros. Melee is growing and Dota 2
No, it's crazy,
shrinking.
dude. Okay, I don't know if you've heard about this, but so Super Smash Bros. Melee had their own version of net play that was run through Dolphin for a very long time.
Slippy.
Right, Slippy. But then now they just released rollback code into Slippy, which is like, dude, I can play someone from like the East Coast and have almost like it's like we're playing in real life, which is like some of the best net code I've ever seen in my life, and it was developed by some guy who's called Fizzy, right? Who just did this himself. And he cares about the community that much that he would... This one man created online for thousands and thousands of people for a game that was released 20 years ago.
Yeah, just because he could, just because he loved the game.
Just because he could and just because he loved the game. And like, and it's honestly gotten so many new people into Melee. I had never played Melee until Slippy came out, and I could play with my friends at any time. And this accessibility lets me really get into the game a lot more, and I really enjoy playing it now. But like, that's what I mean. There's just like a lot of community stuff that like, I don't know. I just hope Dota exists, man, in a few years.
I think it will. It definitely needs to change with what direction it's going. I've heard a lot of arguments about how we need community managers or we need a little bit more structure. I think the lack of transparency from Valve is one of the biggest things that kills it. Yes, it means our reveals are amazing. TI came out of nowhere. We have amazing performance every single year, but you know, in the current digital age, people are just going to assume that you're doing nothing if you don't want to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just think that like, I don't know. I wish Valve could just be more open in terms of communication. It really never dawned on me that like people's lives are in their hands essentially. That whether or not a lot of these people make rent the next day, and who are pro players, you know, whether or not they make rent the next day, whether or not they put food on the table, is dependent on this 200-person game company that wants to release Half-Life Alyx instead of, I don't know, provide structure to people's jobs. And that's like a really, like, to me, that's like the biggest, like the thing that hurts me the most is that like people's lives are genuinely getting affected by this and they haven't really stepped their foot down. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a very scary thing to, yeah, I don't know.
I've got a bit of a controversial opinion on that one. Sure. I don't think that one is on Valve. People choose to invest so heavily into this game. But when they pull the rug out from people like they have,
yeah.
When they say that they're going to make this DPC happen in 2021, when they say that the international is going to come or they cancel ESL Los Angeles at the last minute. That's when you're really affecting people. That is what I find unacceptable, when you don't put a plan into place. I think if people fail, they don't become pro players, whatever. Maybe you shouldn't be able to play video games for a living. But when you make these promises, or when people assume that there's going to be a little bit of security there and you just take it away from them, or you do absolutely nothing to help, that's what I find unacceptable.
Yeah, I think that's kind of crazy. I think it's screwed up. Funny story about ESL1 LA. And I think you know about it. So, like, I've had the opportunity to go to a Dota LAN. I've never been to a Dota LAN, which is, I think, to me, like, blasphemy.
You're missing out.
I am. I absolutely am.
ESL puts on a good LAN.
Dude, okay, the year that Dota was in Vancouver, I had to go back home in the summer. So I was watching TI from my room, right, screaming in the middle of the night in Indonesia. And Peter was like, oh yeah, the guys who own Aqualine were like, hey, here's a few box seats for everyone in the club. Like, go get yourself a box seat. And half the people that went to that event didn't even play Dota. They just went because they got the free tickets, and I couldn't even go. And I was like so depressed. And then the second time for ESL1 LA, right? So through some means, me and Peter were able to like work out a thing where somebody was able to give us tickets as long as we were to pay for the flights, right?
ESL
LA, yeah. And I was this close. I was like telling my parents, I was like, hey man, please, like, I think this is a good investment. Like, I think I'll be able to network a lot there. And me and Peter were like really excited. Peter like kind of bought his tickets like real fast, and I was like a little more hesitant on it because I heard COVID was starting to spread. And my dad was telling me that like his friends in LA were telling him that, hey man, a lot of things are getting closed down. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't want to buy it. Maybe I'll just wait a little bit. And I turned out to be right, but I was still really sad that I still haven't been to a LAN, like I just one thing or another has caused me not to go to a LAN. It's really depressing.
Yeah, I have 2 weeks of vacation a year. I booked one for ESL LA, the other for TI, and neither ended up happening. So that one being pulled out from under me at the last minute was not so great. And my passport's actually expired now. I need to renew it.
Yeah.
But the offices are all closed down. They're not renewing passports right now. No,
you can't. Look, man, my visa situation right now as a foreigner is killing me. It's a whole like I'm just in limbo right now. I got real like I was like. Thank God, like okay, I got like my temporary resident visa like extended, so thank God I'm not an illegal immigrant and not gonna get thrown out.
If you are, don't say so on this podcast, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, the Canadian government, by the way, if you're watching this podcast, I'm not liable. Those were, not real. Okay. Anyway, I think we're pretty far in, so I think we'll have one more time. We'll have time for like one more topic. You know what? I can't think of anything. So
I can't. I want to go back up about the casting. I got distracted again.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Advice for people starting up because my path into it isn't helpful to them. If you want to get good at it, I think one of the best ways is to get friends who are going to give you genuine feedback on how good you are, things you can do to improve. A lot of people, they're going to say nice things to you, and that's great, but it's not going to help you get any better. I don't think you have to be amazing at this in order to do it. I think there's a lot of bad casters. I don't think I'm particularly good. I think it would be very easy for anybody to replace me, and I welcome people to do so. I don't think it's something I want to continue doing going forward that much. Yeah. It's something I help out with when I can. It's a little bit of extra money in my pocket, and I get to talk about a game I love to thousands of people and share that love with people. But get better at it. You have to have friends that are going to help you a little bit at the game. They're going to tell you when you're being an idiot and when what you're doing is good. And you do have to do a bunch of work free. A lot of these people, OD Pixel, for example, he just started casting games. Toby Wan probably put thousands and thousands of unpaid hours into the game and helped build it up. Grant, I talk about OD and Grant, they're the elephants in the room right now, so to speak, but everybody else in NA reaped the benefits of him building up the community, building up this following, and pouring love and being a voice for some of these players who didn't have their own following. You have to do things like that in order to get noticed, and you also have to be decent at casting. So those are the two pieces of advice that I get you. Friends who can help you out and tell you whether or not you're good, and continue to grind out with a passion for the game. You do have to get lucky sometimes. You will have to, meet the right people, but I think that's a path in for anybody interested.
Just to add to that, I think that in general, and this goes back to like the whole philosophy that I think like the world isn't necessarily built to be fair and it shouldn't be fair, is that like I think most of the people in any place, I think in any industry, are rarely the people best fit for it. Like, like the people who have these positions are rarely ever the best at what they do. It's just they've found a way to get there and are good enough to establish and keep their place there, right? So it's kind of like this thing where it's like once you have your opportunity, don't fuck it up and, hold on to it for as long as possible. Because most of the time you will probably get eclipsed because you're probably not the best at what you do, and at some point somebody better is going to come through. But like the idea is that, yeah, the world isn't fair. Just find a way to work around it. And I think you'll be able to figure it out here or there. Yeah, I don't really know if I have anything else to say. That was a really fun podcast, man. I actually enjoyed recording this. I haven't had like a very disorganized like podcast type thing in a very long time, and this genuinely felt like a very good conversation that we had. And I appreciate you coming on, man.
I got off topic a number of times there, but I feel pretty happy at everything that was talked about. So thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Thank you for coming on. Sick. That's Kungpaokenny signing out. Bye-bye. All right, I'm just going to stop the recording.